The moment I walked into my cousin Vanessa's wedding alone, my entire family erupted in muffled laughter and whispers. Poor Olivia, always the career girl, never the bride. My Aunt Margaret sneered loudly enough for the entire row to hear. Little did they know that in exactly 27 minutes, when Nathan Reed, tech billionaire, and my secret fiancé of 6 months would walk through those doors looking for me, their mockery would transform into something far more desperate. Opportunity. If you're watching this and have ever felt the sting of family rejection, only to have them come crawling back when they needed something, you're not alone. My story might sound familiar to many of you watching from homes where family loyalty came with conditions. Before I continue this roller coaster of family betrayal, hit subscribe to join our community of survivors who turned family karma into personal triumph. Now let me take you back to where this all began. Growing up as Olivia Chen meant living with a permanent label, the family disappointment. Despite graduating top of my class from Stanford with a computer science degree and landing a 6-figure job by 25, I was still introduced at family gatherings as the one who hasn't settled down yet. My traditional Chinese-American family measured success in marriages and grandchildren, not career achievements or financial independence. My cousin Vanessa, on the other hand, was the golden child. 3 years younger than me, she'd followed the approved path. Married by 26 to a doctor from a good family, pregnant within the first year, and always deferential to the elders. At every family gathering, the contrast was highlighted with surgical precision. "When are you going to find a nice man like Vanessa did?" my grandmother would ask, while patting my slightly too thick waistline. "No man wants a woman who thinks she's smarter than him, Olivia." The seeds of my black sheep status were planted early when my parents divorced after my father's affair with his secretary, a scandal that rocked our tight-knit community. I was 12 when the family court judge asked which parent I wanted to live with. My answer, neither, wasn't an option, but it cemented my reputation as difficult and ungrateful. I was shuttled between homes every weekend. My mother remarried, within 2 years, to Walter, a real estate developer 20 years her senior with a mansion in Atherton. She quickly replaced her identity as Mrs. Chen with Mrs. Stevens, and I became an inconvenient reminder of her previous life. My room in their house looked like a hotel suite, expensive but impersonal, designed to leave no trace when I departed each Sunday evening. "Try not to mention your father when Walter's friends are over," she'd instruct before dinner parties. "Oh, and maybe wear the dress I bought you instead. That outfit makes you look like you're trying too hard." My father's post-divorce life took a different trajectory. The secretary didn't last, but gambling did. By the time I was in college, he'd cycled through 3 apartments and countless payday loans. I started paying his rent during my sophomore year after finding an eviction notice during a surprise visit. No one in the family knew I was supporting him. They thought his job at the insurance company was keeping him afloat. In reality, I was working 2 campus jobs on top of my studies to cover his basics. Just until I hit a winning streak, Livy, he'd promise each month when I transferred the money. "Don't tell your mother or the aunties, they already think I'm useless." Despite everything, I thrived professionally. I climbed the ranks at Horizon Technologies from junior developer to lead software architect in 5 years. Each promotion came with congratulatory emails from colleagues and silence from family. The day I closed on my condo in San Francisco, a milestone achievement in one of the world's most expensive housing markets, my mother called not to congratulate me, but to complain that I'd missed Vanessa's baby shower. "You need to sort out your priorities, Olivia," she scolded. "No one remembers the woman who coded some program, but they remember who shows up for family." The irony wasn't lost on me that they never showed up for my moments. Last month's promotion to Director of Engineering should have been my crowning achievement. At 32, I was now managing a team of 40 developers and a budget of millions. The company announcement included my photo and a quote from the CEO praising my visionary approach to problem solving. I forwarded the email to my mother, hoping that maybe this time the achievement would be significant enough. Her response was a forwarded invitation to Vanessa's wedding with a note. "Don't forget to RSVP. The family is wondering if you're bringing anyone or coming alone again." That night, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror of my beautiful but empty condo, I confronted the fear that had been growing despite my success, that maybe they were right. Maybe I would end up alone, married to my career, with no one to share my life with. The thought terrified me more than I cared to admit, and it was this vulnerability that my family expertly exploited at every opportunity. What they didn't know was that everything had changed 6 months ago at the annual Tech Innovation Summit in Austin, where I met Nathan Reed. The conference center ballroom was packed with the usual suspects: startup founders in expensive hoodies, venture capitalists scanning the room for the next billion-dollar idea, and tech executives like me trying to recruit talent before competitors could. I was making my way toward the bar when someone bumped into me from behind, sending my phone clattering across the marble floor. "I'm so sorry," a deep voice said, as we both crouched to retrieve it. "Screen's not cracked, is it? I'll replace it if it is." When I looked up, I found myself face to face with Nathan Reed. Not that I immediately recognized him. Unlike most people in tech, I didn't follow the billionaire founder gossip. To me, he was just a tall, somewhat disheveled man with kind eyes and a genuine smile that seemed out of place among the networking sharks. "It's fine," I said, checking the phone. "The case earned its keep today." "Let me buy you a drink to apologize properly," he offered, extending his hand. "I'm Nathan." "Olivia," I replied, shaking it firmly. It wasn't until we were seated at the bar and the bartender did a double take that I realized who he was. Nathan Reed, founder of Quantum Shield, the cybersecurity platform that had revolutionized data protection and made him one of the youngest billionaires in America at 36. What struck me most about Nathan wasn't his wealth, but how he carried himself, without the arrogance that typically accompanied success in our industry. Over martinis, he told me about growing up in a small town in Michigan, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. "We lived in a trailer park until I was 17, he said without a hint of embarrassment. "My first computer was pieced together from parts I salvaged from the electronics recycling center, where I volunteered." His humble background couldn't have been more different from his current status, but it resonated with my own journey. We spent hours talking about the pressure to succeed, the isolation that came with achievement, and the complicated relationships with family that resulted. "My mom's proud now," he explained, "but she doesn't understand what I do or the world I live in. And since the money came, relatives I've never met suddenly remember me as their favorite nephew." I found myself sharing things I rarely discussed: my father's gambling, my mother's emotional abandonment, and the constant feeling of being measured against impossible standards. "My family has a way of making my accomplishments feel insignificant," I admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if they'd notice if I disappeared entirely." "They'd notice if you stopped paying your father's rent," Nathan observed quietly. I stared at him, shocked. "How did you—" "It's what I would do," he said simply. "We take care of people even when they don't deserve it because it says something about who we are, not who they are." That night stretched into breakfast the next morning, and by the time we parted ways, we'd exchanged numbers with a promise to meet again when we returned to San Francisco. Our relationship developed with an intensity that would have alarmed me with anyone else. Nathan had been through a brutal divorce 2 years earlier when his ex-wife, a socialite he'd met after his success, had tried to claim half his company in the settlement. She told the court she'd been instrumental in Quantum Shield's development. He explained one night as we walked along the Embarcadero. In reality, she'd never shown any interest in what I did beyond how much money it generated. The experience had left him wary of relationships where his wealth was the primary attraction. When we started dating, he suggested keeping our relationship private. "I want to know it's real," he said. "Once people find out who I am, everything changes." I understood completely. My success was modest compared to his, but I'd experienced enough social climbing from colleagues to appreciate his caution. Our relationship existed in a bubble of normalcy that both of us treasured. Cooking dinner at my condo, hiking on weekends, and working side by side at coffee shops, just another tech couple in a city full of them. 3 months in, during a weekend trip to Mendocino, Nathan proposed. "Nathan, I've been following Quantum Shield's expansion into Asian markets. Brilliant strategy. I have some thoughts on potential synergies with my family's real estate holdings in Singapore, if you're interested." The conversation that followed was a transparent attempt to establish a business connection, with Garrett barely acknowledging my presence, despite ostensibly having come to speak with me. After he finally left, promising to continue this discussion soon, Nathan raised an eyebrow. Is it always like this with your family? No, I said honestly. Usually they ignore me completely, unless they need tech support. This version is new. Across the room, I spotted my younger cousins Emma and Sophia, once close friends during childhood but distant, since their mothers had decided I was a questionable influence. Now they were hovering nearby, clearly working up the courage to approach. Olivia, Emma finally called, coming over with Sophia in tow. We've missed you at family gatherings lately. I've attended every major event, I pointed out. We were at the same table for Chinese New Year 3 months ago. Well, we haven't really talked, Sophia amended. You know how it is with family functions, so busy. Anyway, we were wondering if you might be able to help us with something. Emma just graduated with her marketing degree, and I'm finishing my business program next semester. We heard Horizon Technologies has an amazing internship program. The request was so predictable, I almost laughed. The application process is online. It's quite competitive. But surely you could put in a good word, Emma pressed. Family connection and all that? Before I could respond, another cousin approached. Lisa, Aunt Margaret's daughter, who had made my adolescence particularly miserable with her constant comparisons and subtle put-downs. Olivia, we absolutely need to catch up, she gushed, ignoring Emma and Sophia completely. It's been ages since our shopping trip. We had never gone shopping together. Not once. Nathan, I don't think we've been introduced properly, she continued, extending her hand with a practiced smile. Lisa Chen, Vanessa's sister, and Olivia's favorite cousin growing up, we were inseparable as children. The revisionist history was becoming more creative by the minute. In reality, Lisa had once accidentally spilled punch on my dress at her Sweet 16 party after I'd received compliments from her crush. Funny, Olivia's never mentioned you, Nathan replied with a pleasant smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lisa's expression faltered momentarily before she recovered. Oh, that's our Olivia. Always so private. We should plan a cousin's weekend soon to catch up properly. My husband just bought a boat. Perhaps you both could join us for a sail? The invitations continued throughout the evening, each more transparent than the last. Relatives who had previously avoided eye contact were now claiming deep bonds and shared memories that had never existed. My mother's second husband, Walter, who had barely tolerated my presence in their home, suddenly had always thought of Olivia as the daughter we never had. As the cake was cut and the dancing began, Nathan and I retreated to a quiet corner of the ballroom. The constant performance had exhausted me, and I leaned against his shoulder, taking comfort in his solid presence. I'm sorry, I said quietly. This is exactly why I was hesitant to bring you into this world. Don't apologize, he replied, stroking my hair gently. If anything, it helps me understand you better. The armor you wear, the way you question praise. It makes sense now. Across the dance floor, I could see various family members watching, us, clearly strategizing their next approach. The calculation in their eyes was unmistakable. The same look I'd seen directed at wealthy clients during my mother's charity fundraisers. They don't see us as people, I realized aloud. To them, we're just potential resources to be exploited. It's not uncommon, Nathan said with the weariness of experience. After my IPO, distant relatives I hadn't seen since childhood suddenly remembered my birthday. My elementary school bully contacted me to apologize and pitch his startup in the same email. The band started playing a slow song, and Nathan stood offering his hand. Dance with me? It might keep the vultures at bay for a few minutes. As we swayed together on the dance floor, I felt the weight of dozens of eyes following our movement. Vanessa was watching with barely concealed irritation. Her special day had somehow become about someone else's relationship. My mother was, beaming with pride she had not earned, already planning how to leverage this connection in her social circles. They'll never stop now, I murmured against Nathan's shoulder. Once they know about you, about us, they'll keep coming with requests. And expectations. Let them, he said simply. It wasn't a grand gesture, just the two of us on a cliffside at sunset, the ring a simple platinum band that had belonged to his grandmother. "I've never met anyone who sees me for me," he said, his voice barely audible above the crashing waves, "who understands both where I came from and where I am without judgment." I said yes immediately, but when he suggested announcing our engagement, I hesitated. The thought of introducing Nathan to my family filled me with dread, not because I was ashamed of him, but because I knew exactly how they would react. They would see dollar signs, not the kind, brilliant man I'd fallen in love with. "Let's wait," I suggested. "I'm not ready to share this with everyone yet." Nathan understood my reluctance, but when Vanessa's wedding invitation arrived, he encouraged me to attend. "Families are complicated," he said, "but cutting them off completely rarely brings peace." I agreed to go, but insisted on attending alone. "I need to navigate my family dynamics without them immediately focusing on you," I explained. "Once they know about you, that's all they'll see." The night before the wedding, my mother called to confirm I was coming and to express her disappointment that I'd be attending solo. "Everyone's bringing someone, Olivia. Even your second cousin Mai is bringing her new boyfriend, and she's only 20. What will people think?" "They'll think I'm independent and secure enough to attend a family function alone," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "They'll think you couldn't find anyone willing to put up with your workaholic lifestyle," she snapped back. "Would it kill you to make an effort to fit in for once?" After hanging up, I called Nathan in tears. Maybe I should skip it entirely. "Go," he said firmly. "Stand your ground. Show them you're unaffected by their judgment." What I didn't tell him was that I wasn't unaffected. Despite my outward success, part of me still craved their approval, still believed that if I achieved enough, they would finally see me as worthy. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my closet deliberating between outfits. I finally selected a simple but elegant emerald silk dress from Valentino's latest collection, a piece that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment but would appear understated to the untrained eye. The choice felt symbolic of my life. Extraordinary accomplishments disguised as ordinary to avoid family scrutiny. As I fastened my grandmother's jade earrings, the only family heirloom I possessed, I made a decision. I texted Nathan. Changed my mind. "If you're free later, come to the reception around 7, time to stop hiding what makes me happy." His response was immediate. "On my way. Will be fashionably late to make an entrance." I smiled at his message, not realizing just how prophetic those words would become. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom had been transformed into a floral fantasy that screamed money and meticulous planning. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over cream and blush roses that cascaded from ceiling installations, while a string quartet played softly in the corner. This was the kind of venue I could technically afford, but would never waste money on. A detail that made my mother's constant comparisons about my lack of refinement all the more ironic. "Name?" asked the tuxedoed attendant at the entrance. "Olivia Chen, family of the bride." His eyes scanned the seating chart. "Ah, yes, table 23. I didn't need to look at the ballroom map to know what that meant. 23 would be the singles table, likely positioned near the kitchen entrance or behind a column. Sure enough, as I made my way through the elegantly dressed crowd, I spotted table 23, partially obscured by an enormous floral arrangement and populated by elderly distant relatives and awkward teenage cousins, too young for the cool young adult table, but too old for the children's section. "Olivia, you made it!" Vanessa's voice carried across the room with practiced enthusiasm. My cousin glided toward me in a cloud of white tulle and lace, her expertly contoured face arranged in what I recognized as her gracious hostess expression. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, leaning in for the obligatory air kiss. "The venue is stunning, isn't it?" she preened, gesturing around. "Garrett's parents insisted on the Ritz. We actually wanted something more exclusive, but family traditions. You know." She gave me a quick once-over, her eyes lingering on my dress. "That's a cute color on you. Sample sale?" I smiled tightly. "Something like that." "Well, it's perfect for you. Professional but still feminine if you're trying to meet someone." "That is." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "There are some eligible groomsmen, though most are already taken." And then I saw him. Nathan, standing in the doorway in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford tuxedo, scanning the room with purpose. Even if I hadn't known him, I would have recognized money in his bearing, Not from arrogance, but from the quiet confidence of someone who never had to prove his worth. The distinction was subtle but unmistakable, like the difference between my mother's showy designer handbags and my grandmother's simple jade bracelet that had been in our family for generations. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and his face broke into the warm, genuine smile that had captured my heart 6 months ago. As he began making his way toward me, I felt a shift in the atmosphere, like a weather vane suddenly spinning to track a changing wind. And in that moment, watching my family's expressions transform from dismissal to intense curiosity, I realized I was about to witness the most dramatic family performance of my life. The low rumble of excited whispers followed Nathan as he crossed the ballroom. I heard fragments of speculation. "That's Nathan Reed, Quantum Shield founder, Forbes cover last month, spreading like wildfire through the reception." Someone nearby frantically Googled him on their phone, gasping at the results. Nathan, oblivious to the stir he was creating, kept his eyes fixed on me with that slightly lopsided smile that always made my heart skip. He navigated around the dance floor with casual grace, nodding politely at people who tried to catch his attention, but never breaking his stride toward table 23. "Sorry I'm late," he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. "Board members can talk for hours about nothing." "You're here now," I replied, suddenly aware of every pair of eyes in our vicinity, watching this interaction with rapt attention. Great Aunt Linda, who moments ago had been lamenting my spinsterhood, was now straightening her posture and patting her silver hair. "Olivia, darling, aren't you going to introduce your friend?" Her voice had climbed at least an octave higher than her previous tone. "Nathan, this is my Great Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda, this is Nathan Reed, my fiancé," he completed, taking her hand and shaking it warmly. "It's a pleasure to meet Olivia's family. She speaks of you often." The lie was kind, but completely transparent to me. In 6 months of dating, I'd mentioned my family only when necessary and never with affection. Yet Nathan, with his innate social grace, was already charming Great Aunt Linda, who was practically purring with delight. "Fiancé!" she exclaimed. "Olivia, you naughty girl, keeping secrets!" She turned to the table at large. "Did everyone hear? Olivia is engaged." And just like that, table 23, previously the Siberia of wedding seating, became the center of attention. Relatives who had barely acknowledged my arrival were suddenly finding reasons to stop by, their faces arranged in expressions of delighted surprise that couldn't quite mask their calculation. Across the room, I saw my mother frozen in mid-conversation, her champagne glass halfway to her lips as she processed this development. Even from a distance, I could read the rapid succession of emotions crossing her face: shock, confusion, and finally, most tellingly, opportunity. She excused herself from her circle and made a beeline for our table, intercepted briefly by Aunt Margaret, who whispered something urgently in her ear while gesturing in our direction. By the time they reached us, both women had transformed into beaming, welcoming versions of themselves I had never encountered before. "Olivia," my mother gushed, embracing me with unprecedented enthusiasm. "Why didn't you tell me you were bringing someone so special?" Without waiting for an answer, she turned to Nathan and extended her hand. "Lily Stevens, Olivia's mother. This is my sister-in-law, Margaret." "Nathan Reed," he replied, shaking both their hands. "I've heard so much about the family. Congratulations on your daughter's beautiful wedding," he added to Aunt Margaret. "Oh, thank you," Aunt Margaret simpered. "Vanessa will be thrilled to know someone of your caliber is attending her special day." She leaned in conspiratorially. "I recognized you immediately, of course. Your work in cybersecurity is revolutionary. My husband Robert is in finance. I must introduce you two." As if summoned by the scent of money, Uncle Robert materialized at our table, drink in hand and business smile firmly in place. Did I hear my name? Robert Chen, family patriarch and Vanessa's proud father. He pumped Nathan's hand vigorously. "Tremendous wedding, isn't it? Spared no expense for my little girl." "It's certainly elegant," Nathan agreed, his hand finding mine under the table and squeezing gently, a silent acknowledgement of the spectacle unfolding around us. "I've been following Quantum Shield's growth for years," Uncle Robert continued, though I knew for a fact he could barely operate his email. Fascinating approach to blockchain security. I have some thoughts on potential applications in traditional banking if you're interested. If you're watching this and feeling the secondhand embarrassment, trust me, it was 100 times worse being there. The way my family transformed from dismissive to desperate was both validating and sickening, like so many of you commenting. About your own experiences with conditional family love, I was witnessing in real time how quickly their tune changed when status and money entered the picture. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear the next part, where things take an even more twisted turn. I'm always open to new perspectives, Nathan replied diplomatically, though tonight I'm just here to support Olivia and celebrate your family's happy occasion. My mother, who had been hovering anxiously, seized this opportunity to assert her connection. Olivia has always been my brilliant girl, she declared, placing a proprietary hand on my shoulder. I always told her, didn't I, darling, focus on your education, reach for the stars. Her father and I sacrificed everything to give her the best opportunities. The revisionist history was so brazen I nearly choked on my water. Nathan's thumb traced circles on my palm under the table. A calming gesture he'd learned helped center me when stressed. You must be very proud, he said neutrally. Olivia is exceptional at everything she does. Her team at Horizon speaks of her leadership in glowing terms. You know about her work? My mother asked, surprised. Of course, Nathan replied. We met at the Tech Innovation Summit in Austin. Her presentation on adaptive security protocols was the highlight of the conference. This was a slight embellishment. We'd met at the bar after my presentation, which had been well received but hardly the highlight, but his support warmed me nonetheless. That's our Olivia, Uncle Robert chimed in, always the brainiac. We knew she'd make connections in high places eventually. The implication was clear. My worth to the family had suddenly skyrocketed based solely on who I was dating. The transformation was as swift as it was transparent. Soon, cousin Vanessa herself appeared, her bridal irritation barely concealed beneath a tight smile. Olivia, you should have told us you were bringing such an important guest. We would have seated you at the family table. She turned to Nathan with practiced charm. I'm Vanessa, the bride. We're practically sisters, Olivia and I. Nathan, to his credit, didn't miss a beat. Congratulations on your marriage. It's a beautiful celebration. Thank you, she preened before turning back to me with narrowed eyes. Though I'm surprised you kept your engagement so quiet, Olivia. Not even a family announcement. We're private people, I replied simply. Well, you simply must come take photos with us, Vanessa insisted, though I noticed the invitation was clearly meant for Nathan rather than me. Garrett would love to meet you. He's in venture capital, you know. Perhaps later, Nathan demurred. I've just arrived and haven't even had a chance to properly catch up with my fiancé. The possessive term sent another ripple through the assembled relatives. I saw my second cousin, Mai, frantically texting, no doubt spreading the news to those not within earshot. As Vanessa reluctantly returned to her other guests, I watched my relatives scatter strategically throughout the reception, each clearly planning their next approach. My mother had cornered the wedding photographer, likely arranging for photos with Nathan. Uncle Robert was already deep in conversation with Garrett's father, gesturing in our direction. Aunt Margaret was typing furiously on her phone, probably Googling Nathan's net worth. Is it everything you expected? Nathan murmured, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Worse, I admitted. I'm sorry for subjecting you to this. Don't be. It's fascinating from an anthropological perspective. He surveyed the room, though I'm surprised your father hasn't approached yet. He's probably at the bar, I sighed. He finds these family gatherings difficult. As if on cue, I spotted my father watching us from across the room, his expression unreadable. Unlike the others, he made no move to approach, simply raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement when our eyes met. Before I could decide whether to go to him, my mother reappeared with the wedding photographer in tow. We simply must get some pictures of the happy couple, she announced. Nathan, would you mind terribly? It's for the family album. As we stood for photos I knew had never been planned until Nathan's arrival, I felt a growing discomfort. This wasn't just amusing anymore. It was revealing something ugly about my family and, by extension, about the world Nathan navigated daily. Nathan offered him the microphone, which he declined with a small shake of his head. 3 years ago, my father continued, addressing the room at large, when Robert's investment firm was on the verge of collapse due to what he called market fluctuations, Olivia liquidated her stock options to provide him with a loan that, to this day, remains unpaid. Uncle Robert's face drained of color. James, that's a private family matter. No more private than announcing Olivia's engagement without her permission, my father countered sharply. No more private than the way this family has treated my daughter while benefiting from her success. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and regret. I'm not innocent in this. I've taken from you too, Olivia. The rent money, the medical bills, I told myself it was temporary, that someday I'd make it right. The public admission stunned me. We had never spoken openly about the financial support I provided him. The difference, he continued, is that I never pretended it was anything other than what it was, a daughter helping her father when he had nowhere else to turn. I never claimed credit for your success or tried to use you to advance myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa stepped forward, her expression conflicted. You paid for my wedding venue? She asked me directly. After everything? After how we've treated you? Your family? I said simply. Despite everything. Her carefully composed facade cracked slightly. I don't understand. Why would you do that and then keep it secret? Because real generosity doesn't come with strings attached, Nathan answered. For me. Something Olivia understood long before I met her. As the implications of these revelations rippled through the gathering, I saw something shift in the collective expression of my family. Shock giving way to shame, calculations replaced by reflection. The carefully constructed narrative of family roles had been permanently disrupted. Uncle Robert attempted damage control. Well, this is unexpected. But family is family. We've always supported Olivia in our way and… Stop, I said firmly. Just stop. No more rewriting history to suit the moment. No more conditional acceptance. Either you see me for who I am, all of me, not just the parts that benefit you, or we have no relationship going forward. The ultimatum hung in the air. Years of suppressed feelings finally given voice. In that moment of raw honesty, standing beside the man who had never asked me to be anything other than myself, I felt a lifetime of seeking approval finally fall away. What happened next would determine which relationships survived the night, and which would be permanently altered by the truth finally spoken aloud. The reception continued in a subdued fashion after our confrontation. Some relatives retreated to distant tables, uncomfortable with the public exposure of family dynamics usually kept hidden. Others approached cautiously, attempting awkward apologies or explanations that mostly served to highlight the depth of the problem, rather than solve it. My mother found me as Nathan stepped away to take a business call, a legitimate one this time. Olivia, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. What you said earlier, it wasn't entirely fair. I've always wanted the best for you. I looked at her, really looked at her. Perhaps for the first time in years. The carefully maintained appearance, the constant positioning for social advantage, the way her eyes still darted around the room, even during this supposedly intimate conversation. You wanted what you thought was best, I corrected gently, based on your values, not mine. There's a difference. I'm still your mother, she insisted. Doesn't that count for something? The question hung between us, loaded with unspoken history. In the past, I might have immediately acquiesced, accepting the biological connection as sufficient reason to maintain toxic patterns. Tonight had changed something fundamental in me. Being a mother is a biological fact, I said finally. Being a parent, someone who nurtures, supports, and accepts unconditionally, that's a choice you make every day. You haven't been making that choice for a long time, Mum. Her face crumpled slightly, the rare display of genuine emotion surprising. Us both. I don't know how to be different, she admitted. This is how I was raised, how my mother treated me. I know, I acknowledged. And that's why I'm not cutting you off completely. But moving forward, we need boundaries. Real ones. starting with the understanding that my relationship with Nathan isn't a family resource, it's my personal life. She nodded slowly, though I could see the adjustment would be difficult for her. We'll set boundaries together. The important thing is that we see each other clearly, even if they don't. His words comforted me, but as I looked around at my family's transformed attitudes, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. These people shared my blood, but had never shared my joys or sorrows. Now they wanted to share Nathan's wealth and connections, rewriting our history to justify their sudden interest. What I didn't know then was that their performance was even. More calculated than I realized, and that the truth of their intentions would soon be revealed in the most painful way possible. The reception was in full swing, the dance floor packed with increasingly uninhibited guests, as the open bar worked its magic. Nathan had been cornered by Garrett and several male relatives near the bar, all eager to discuss investment opportunities and exchange business cards. I'd excused myself to find a moment of peace, heading toward the terrace for fresh air. The hallway leading to the outdoor area passed by the ladies' lounge, and as I approached, I heard familiar voices floating through the partially open door. I slowed my steps, something in their tone making me hesitate. "Absolute goldmine," my Aunt Margaret was saying, her voice slightly slurred from champagne. "Did you see how he looks at her? Completely besotted? Olivia finally making herself useful to the family?" I froze, mid-step, my hand gripping the wall for support. I nearly fell over when I saw him walk in. My mother's voice replied, "Nathan Reed, do you know what his company is valued at?" "Billions," with a B, and Olivia never said a word. Typical selfish behavior, keeping him all to herself. At least she trapped him before he realized he could do better. Another voice chimed in. "Lisa," I thought, though I still don't understand what he sees in her. She's not even the pretty one in the family. Their laughter cut through me like glass, but I remained rooted to the spot, unable to walk away. "Walter's already planning how to approach him about investing in the new development," my mother continued. "Nathan's exactly the kind of connection we need to take the business to the next level. I told Walter we should invite them for dinner, next week." "Good luck with that," Aunt Margaret scoffed. "You know how Olivia is. Always kept herself separate from the family. She probably won't share him easily." "She'll come around," my mother said confidently. "I'm her mother after all, and if she wants any relationship with this family going forward, she'll learn to be generous. It's the least she can do after all we've done for her." I almost laughed at the absurdity of that statement. What exactly had they done for me besides years of criticism and emotional neglect? "Vanessa is furious, by the way," Lisa added. "Says Olivia deliberately upstaged her wedding by bringing him without warning. You should have seen her face when the photographer kept asking for pictures of Mr. Reed and his fiancée. Vanessa?" "We'll get over it," Aunt Margaret dismissed. "Especially when Olivia's billionaire fiancé becomes a family resource. I'm already thinking we should plan a family reunion at our lake house this summer, the perfect opportunity to strengthen connections." "Robert's got big plans," she continued, lowering her voice slightly. "He's already working on a proposal for Nathan to invest in his new fund. Says, with a backer like Reed, he could finally expand the way he's always wanted." "What about Olivia's father?" someone asked. Cousin Mai's mother, I thought. "Is he in on this too?" "James?" My mother laughed derisively. "He can barely keep himself afloat, though I wouldn't be surprised if he's already hit Nathan up for a loan. He's always looking for a handout." The unfairness of that accusation made my blood boil. My father had never asked me for money. I had offered it, seeing his struggle. And unlike the vultures in the bathroom, he had always shown genuine interest in my life and career, even when he didn't fully understand it. "I still can't believe." "She landed someone like Nathan Reed," Lisa marveled. "What do you think her technique was?" "She's not exactly the warm, feminine type men usually go for." The crude implications behind her words hung in the air, followed by snickering. "Whatever she did, she should give lessons," Aunt Margaret joked. "I've got 2 more daughters to marry off, and a billionaire son-in-law would certainly help with the country club membership fees." More laughter, more glasses clinking. I remained frozen in place, each word cementing a cold realization in my chest. They weren't just opportunistic, they were actively planning to exploit my relationship. "We should get back before they miss us," my mother said finally. "Walter's Supposed to be introducing Nathan to his golf buddies, they're always looking for new members at the club. People didn't see him. They saw what he represented, just as my family had never seen me. The photographer positioned us near the ornate wedding cake, directing Nathan to stand closer, to put his arm around me. My mother hovered nearby, stage managing the shoot with increasing authority. Perhaps Olivia could wear my diamond necklace for the photos, she suggested, already unfastening the ostentatious piece Walter had given her for their anniversary. It would look lovely with her dress. Her jade earrings are perfect, Nathan interjected smoothly. Family heirlooms have more meaning than borrowed jewelry, don't you think? The subtle rebuke silenced my mother momentarily. As the photographer continued snapping pictures, Nathan whispered in my ear, "Are you okay? We can leave if this is too much." Looking up at his concerned expression, I realized something important. While my family was seeing dollar signs, Nathan was seeing me, just as he always had. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. "I'm okay," I assured him. "Actually, I'm better than okay. For the first time at a family event, I feel like I have an ally." What I didn't realize then was how quickly that sense of validation would turn to betrayal as the evening progressed, and how much I would need that alliance. When I discovered what my family was really saying behind our backs. Dinner was served shortly after Nathan's arrival, but food was clearly secondary to the networking opportunity my family perceived. The wedding coordinator had to repeatedly ask people to return to their assigned seats as a steady stream of relatives found excuses to visit table 23. My third cousin Jamie, who had ignored my last 3 birthday cards, suddenly remembered our childhood summers together at Lake Tahoe. "Remember how we used to catch frogs by the dock, Olivia?" Those were the days. "Hey, my son is applying to engineering programs this fall. Maybe you could put in a word somewhere." Aunt Vivian, who had once told my mother I was too opinionated to make a good wife, now couldn't stop praising my independent spirit. I always told Lily that Olivia would find her. Way! Some flowers bloom later, but more spectacularly, don't they, Nathan? Even the teenage cousins who had been making fun of me earlier were now hanging around, not so subtly dropping mentions of their Instagram accounts and YouTube channels in case anyone was interested in supporting young creators. Uncle Robert, predictably, was the most transparent. After his 3rd trip to our table, he finally dropped any pretense of casual conversation and pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. "Nathan, I've been thinking about our earlier chat. My firm is always looking for innovative investment opportunities." He slid the card across the table. "I specialize in high net worth portfolio management. Perhaps we could schedule a lunch? Next week?" My treat, of course. "I'll have my assistant reach out." Nathan replied noncommittally, pocketing the card without looking at it. My mother had appointed herself Nathan's personal guide to the family, parading him around like a trophy she had somehow acquired through superior parenting. "Nathan, you simply must meet my cousin Eleanor. She's on the board of the symphony. Oh, and here's Walter's colleague from the real estate development firm. They're breaking ground on luxury condos in Palo Alto next month." I watched this performance with growing discomfort, remembering all the times she had dismissed my achievements as insignificant. Now she was using my relationship to elevate her own social standing, rewriting our history with every introduction. Always encouraged Olivia's ambitions, I overheard her telling an impressed guest, "I knew she was destined for greatness. Mother's intuition, you know." Nathan, to his credit, maintained his composure throughout this parade, but I could see his smile becoming more fixed as the evening wore on. During a brief moment alone as the dessert course was being served, he leaned close to my ear. "Your cousin's husband hasn't taken his eyes off you for the past 20 minutes, he murmured. "Should I be concerned?" I glanced over to see Garrett, Vanessa's new husband, indeed watching me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "That's new," I admitted. He barely acknowledged my existence during the engagement party. As if summoned by our attention, Garrett approached our table, champagne in hand. "Olivia, we haven't had a chance to catch up," he said, his gaze flickering between Nathan and me with calculated interest. "You're looking different tonight." "Marriage agrees with you, Garrett," I replied pointedly. "Vanessa must be keeping you busy with the move to your new house." The house, yes, he said vaguely, his attention clearly elsewhere. Interesting choice for a man who allegedly needs financial help. The observation struck me as significant. Despite his financial struggles, my father had shown more integrity tonight than relatives who lived in luxury. Nathan's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it briefly before his expression changed. Olivia, I need to tell you something. While you were gone, I overheard your uncle and aunt discussing plans to announce our engagement to everyone during the Yay toast without consulting either of us. They wouldn't dare, I said, though I knew immediately that they absolutely would. They've already spoken to the DJ about giving them the microphone after the best man's speech, Nathan confirmed. Apparently, they want to turn our engagement into a family celebration, one that conveniently establishes their connection to me in front of all their friends and business associates. The presumption was breathtaking. Not only were they planning to hijack Vanessa's wedding with our announcement, but they were doing so without even asking us, treating our relationship as community property to be leveraged for social capital. So, we have a choice, Nathan continued. We can leave now and avoid the whole situation. We can stay and let them make the announcement, essentially rewarding their behavior. Or, I prompted when he paused. A slight smile played at the yay, corners of his mouth. Or we can take control of the narrative ourselves. Something in his tone made me straighten. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time your family learned who you really are and what they've been missing by treating you as an afterthought all these years. He squeezed my hands gently. But it's your decision. These are your relatives, and you'll have to deal with the consequences long after tonight. I looked out at the reception, at my mother charming Nathan's business associate, whom she'd somehow identified and cornered, at Uncle Robert showing something on his phone to a cluster of impressed listeners, at Aunt Margaret watching us with calculating eyes from across the room. Then I looked back at Nathan, who had never once in 6 months asked me for anything, except honesty and partnership. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity. Let's do it, I said. Let's take back the narrative. Little did I know that the confrontation we were about to initiate would uncover family secrets far deeper than I had imagined. Secrets that would permanently alter my understanding of loyalty, betrayal, and what it truly means to be family. If you've ever reached that breaking point with toxic family members, you know the mix of dread and liberation I was feeling. The next part of this story reveals just how deep family deception can go, and the moment when I finally found my voice. Like so many of you who've shared similar experiences in the comments, sometimes the strongest thing we can do is stand up for ourselves, even when it means confronting the people who were supposed to love us unconditionally. Hit subscribe now to make sure you don't miss the most satisfying part of this family karma story. Nathan and I returned to the reception with purpose, our plan simple but potentially explosive. We would address the opportunism directly, rather than allowing it to continue unchecked. As we approached our table, I noticed my father watching, us from his relatively isolated position near the bar, the only family member who hadn't attempted to capitalize on Nathan's presence. The DJ announced the cake cutting, drawing guests toward the elaborate 5-tier creation at the center of the room. Nathan squeezed my hand reassuringly as we joined the crowd. You sure about this? He murmured. I nodded, my resolve strengthening as I watched my relatives jockeying for position, not to see the bride and groom, but to stand near us for the inevitable photos. After Vanessa and Garrett completed the traditional cake feeding, Uncle Robert seized the microphone from the DJ with practiced authority. While we have everyone gathered, he boomed, our family has another wonderful announcement to share on this joyous occasion. Several guests looked confused, and I saw Vanessa's expression tighten with irritation. She clearly hadn't been consulted about this addition to her wedding program. Before Uncle Robert could continue, Nathan stepped forward smoothly. If you don't mind, Robert, I think Olivia and I should share our own news. Surprised but pleased at the opportunity to publicly solidify his connection to Nathan, Uncle Robert handed over the microphone with an expansive gesture. Of course, the man of the hour. Nathan thanked him and turned to address the gathering, his voice confident but not showy. First, I want to congratulate Vanessa and Garrett on their beautiful wedding. Finding true partnership is precious, and it should be celebrated. He paused, smiling at the couple with genuine warmth. Olivia and I were hoping to keep our news quiet today to avoid taking any attention from the bride and groom, but since it seems the word has spread, He reached for my hand, drawing me to his side. Yes, we are engaged to be married. It's been a wonderful 6 months together. A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. 6 months, the timeline revealing that our relationship had been established long before tonight's revelation. What many of you don't know, Nathan continued, is how Olivia and I met. I'd like to share that story if you'll indulge me for a moment. He proceeded to recount our meeting at the tech conference, emphasizing my professional accomplishments and the immediate intellectual connection we'd formed. As he spoke, I watched my relatives' expressions, some showing surprise at hearing about my career success, others growing uncomfortable as Nathan painted a picture of me completely at odds with the family narrative. What drew me to Olivia wasn't just her brilliant mind, he said, his voice softening. It was her integrity, her unwavering commitment to supporting those she cares about, often without recognition or thanks. His gaze shifted subtly toward my father, who was listening intently. She taught me that true family isn't always about blood. It's about who stands by you when it matters. I felt a lump forming in my throat as Nathan handed me the microphone. This hadn't been part of our plan, but I understood the gift he was giving me. The chance to speak my truth after years of silence. Thank you all for your sudden interest in my relationship, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. It's been enlightening to see how quickly perceptions can change. I took a deep breath, feeling decades of suppressed emotions rising to the surface. For those wondering why I kept my engagement private, the answer is simple. I wanted to protect something precious from being treated as a transaction. My mother's face paled, and Aunt Margaret shifted uncomfortably. I've spent years trying to earn approval from this family. Achievements, education, career success, none of it seemed to matter because I wasn't following the expected path. Tonight has confirmed what I've long suspected, that acceptance in this family is conditional, based not on who you are, but on what you can provide. A tense silence fell over the reception. From the corner of my eye, I saw my father move closer, his expression unreadable. What you may not know, I said looking directly at Uncle Robert, is that Nathan comes from humble beginnings, not unlike my own. His success wasn't inherited or married into. It was earned through intelligence and hard work, qualities this family has consistently undervalued. Nathan gently took back the microphone, his hand supportive at my waist. Since we're clearing the air, there are a few things that should be addressed, he said calmly. First, to dispel any misconceptions, I have a strict policy against investing in family businesses, regardless of whose family it is. Uncle Robert's face fell visibly, while several other relatives shifted their weight nervously. Second, Nathan continued, contrary to what some might believe, Olivia has never once asked me for financial assistance for herself or anyone else. Her independence is one of the many qualities I admire about her. He paused, his expression turning more serious. And finally, something that might interest everyone here, the venue for today's wedding. Murmurs spread through the crowd as confusion registered on many faces. 6 months ago, when Olivia mentioned her cousin was struggling to secure the Ritz-Carlton for her wedding after a last-minute cancellation, I made a few calls, Nathan revealed. The anonymous donation that covered the difference between the original venue and this one wasn't from a family friend, as you were told. It was from me, at Olivia's request. Gasps and whispers erupted. Vanessa's mouth opened in shock as she stared at me. Olivia didn't want recognition, Nathan explained. She wanted her cousin to have her dream wedding, despite their complicated relationship. That's the kind of person she is, generous without expectation of return. My mother stepped forward, her composure cracking. Olivia, why wouldn't you? Tell us. We could have properly thanked. Because it wasn't about gratitude, I interrupted, taking the microphone back. It was about doing something kind without turning it into social currency. Something this family seems to have forgotten is possible. Before anyone could respond, my father finally approached, stopping a respectful distance from us. There's something else they don't know, he said quietly, his voice still carrying in the stunned silence. Something I think it's time to share. And I need to make sure Robert doesn't drink too much before making his investment pitch. Aunt Margaret agreed. I heard movement and quickly retreated around the corner, pressing myself against the wall as they exited the bathroom. When their voices had faded down the hallway, I slipped into the now empty lounge and locked myself in a stall, my hands shaking. The worst part wasn't their plotting or even their insults. It was the confirmation that nothing had changed. To them, I was still the same disappointing Olivia, only now with a valuable asset attached. They didn't see my happiness or my relationship, just an opportunity to advance their own interests. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of ruining my makeup, of knowing they had hurt me yet again. I took deep breaths, counting slowly as I had learned to do during panic attacks in college. When I felt steady enough, I checked my appearance in the mirror, reapplied my lipstick, and straightened my shoulders. I would get through this evening. With dignity, then Nathan and I would discuss how to handle my family going forward. We had options. The bathroom door opened and Vanessa walked in, stopping short when she saw me. Her perfectly made-up face tightened with barely concealed irritation. "There you are. Your fiancé is looking for you." She emphasized the word fiancé with subtle mockery. "Quite the surprise for everyone, your engagement. Funny how you never mentioned it until tonight." "It was private," I replied evenly. "Not everything needs to be a public announcement." "Right." She examined her manicure. "Though some might see bringing him to my wedding without warning as deliberately stealing attention." "That wasn't my intention," I said truthfully. "And congratulations again on your marriage. Garrett seems attentive." Her eyes narrowed at my careful choice of words. We both knew her new husband had spent more time networking than celebrating their union tonight. "Just keep your billionaire boyfriend away from my husband," she said flatly. "Garrett doesn't need to be distracted with business talks during our wedding." The hypocrisy was stunning. Garrett had been the one pursuing Nathan relentlessly all evening. "I'll let Nathan know you'd prefer he focus on celebrating your special day," I replied with deliberate sweetness. As I moved to leave, Vanessa blocked my path slightly. "One more thing, Olivia. When the family starts asking for favors, and they will, remember who's been there for you all these years and who hasn't. Loyalty matters." The threat was thinly veiled, and I felt a flash of anger burn through my remaining patience. "Yes, it does," I agreed quietly. Which is why I remember exactly who showed up when I needed support, and who only appeared when there was something to gain. I stepped around her and walked out, my heart pounding, but my resolve strengthening with every step. The family I had spent years trying to please had just shown their true colors in the most unambiguous way possible. No amount of success would ever be enough. They would simply raise the extraction price. As I re-entered the ballroom, I spotted Nathan immediately, his tall figure standing out among my relatives, who had formed an eager circle around him. His eyes found mine across the room, and the genuine relief on his face when he saw me was a stark contrast to the calculating expression surrounding him. I made my way towards him, each step feeling like a decision. The conversation I had overheard had changed something fundamental, not just about how I saw my family, but about how I saw myself and the choices I had been making. Nathan excused himself from the group and met me halfway, concern evident in his expression. "You okay? You were gone a while." I took a deep breath, looking up at the man who had seen value in me long before he knew my family or their opinions. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be. We need to talk." Nathan guided me to a quiet alcove near the terrace doors, his hand warm against the small of my back. The music and chatter faded slightly as we stepped away from the main reception area. "What happened?" he asked, his voice low with concern. I hesitated, torn between unburdening myself and protecting him from the ugliness I had discovered. "I overheard some family members talking in the bathroom," I finally admitted. "About us. About you, specifically." His expression didn't change. "Let me guess, they were discussing how to best leverage your relationship with me for financial gain?" The accuracy of his assessment startled me. "How did you know?" "Because while you were gone, your uncle cornered me with a half-baked investment proposal that would have essentially funneled money directly into his personal accounts," Nathan explained quietly. And your cousin's husband suggested I might want to get in on the ground floor of his next venture, which seems to consist entirely of an idea he sketched on a cocktail napkin. He rubbed his temples slightly. Oh, and your mother's husband mentioned naming a wing of their next development after me, if I'd be interested in becoming a founding investor. When I asked about the projected returns, he assured me that wasn't something I needed to worry about. My face burned with shame. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I never should have. Don't apologize for them, he interrupted gently. This isn't a reflection on you. Besides, it's nothing I haven't encountered before. Success attracts opportunists. It's practically a law of nature. What did they say? I asked, dreading the answer, but needing to know. In the bathroom, I mean. I took a deep breath and recounted the conversation as accurately as I could, trying to keep my voice steady despite the hurt resurging as I repeated their words. Nathan's expression darkened progressively, his jaw tightening as I described their plans to use our relationship as a family resource. They called me their meal ticket, I concluded, the words bitter on my tongue. My own mother is already planning how to extract maximum value from our relationship. Nathan was quiet for a moment, his eyes following my relatives as they circulated through the reception. You know what's interesting? He finally said. Not one person tonight has asked me what makes you special, what I love about you. They're so focused on what I'm worth that they've completely missed who you are. The simple observation brought unexpected tears to my eyes. They've always been that way, I whispered. I just hoped someday it would change. Nathan took my hands in his expression serious. Olivia, I think we should leave. This environment is toxic and you deserve better than to be treated as a conduit to wealth rather than a person to be celebrated. The suggestion was tempting. So tempting that I almost agreed immediately, but years of complicated family dynamics made me hesitate. If we leave now, it will cause a scene, I said. Vanessa already thinks I'm trying to steal attention from her wedding. Frankly, I don't care what Vanessa thinks, Nathan replied, a rare edge to his voice. I care about you and the fact that you're being hurt by people who should protect you. His protectiveness warmed me, but I felt conflicted. Despite everything, these people were my blood relations. The conditioning to maintain family harmony, to avoid public scenes ran deep. It's complicated, I tried to explain. There's history here that goes back decades. Leaving dramatically might feel good in the moment, but it could permanently damage relationships that might still be salvageable. Nathan studied me for a long moment. Can I ask you something? And I want you to really think before answering. He waited for my nod before continuing. What exactly would you be losing if these relationships were damaged? From what I've seen tonight and what you've told me previously, these connections seem to cause you more pain than joy. His question struck at the heart of my dilemma. What was I holding on to? Memories of childhood moments when things were simpler. The hope that someday they would see me for who I was. The cultural expectations of filial devotion that had been instilled in me since birth. I remember when I was 8, I said slowly, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. My father took me to the science museum, just the two of us. It was before the gambling, before everything fell apart. He let me explore every exhibit, never rushing me. When I got excited about the computer programming display, he didn't tell me it was for boys or that I should focus on something else. He just watched me figure it out and said he was proud. I blinked back tears. There were good moments, not many, but they existed. I guess I've been waiting for those versions of my family to return. Nathan's expression softened. The people we love are complex. They can hurt us deeply and still have moments of genuine connection. The question is whether those moments are enough to justify continuing patterns that cause you pain. As we stood there, I saw my father across the room, watching us with that same unreadable expression from earlier. Unlike the others, he had maintained his distance all evening, making no attempt to approach Nathan or insert himself into our conversations. My father hasn't tried to use you, I noted, more to myself than to Nathan. No, he hasn't, Nathan agreed. He's the only one who's kept his distance, actually. But beggars can't be choosers at our age, right? Before I could respond, she was pulled away by her mother, my Aunt Margaret, who shot me a dismissive glance before whispering something in Vanessa's ear. I made my way to table 23, where Great Aunt Linda was already holding court. "Olivia, still single, I see," she proclaimed loudly as I sat down. You know, in my day, women knew they had to prioritize finding a husband before their looks faded. Though I suppose with your career focus, you might be able to afford one of those egg-freezing procedures they advertise now. I reached for the wine glass at my place setting, silently calculating how many hours I needed to stay before making a graceful exit. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Running late. Board emergency. We'll be there by 7:30. Save me a dance." As I was typing my reply, Uncle Robert materialized beside me, his substantial frame blocking the light. "There's my favorite niece with the fancy tech job," he boomed, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Been meaning to ask you about retirement planning. Your aunt and I are thinking it might be time to cash in on some investments." He winked conspiratorially. "Though if you keep climbing that corporate ladder, maybe we can just move in with you someday. You'll have plenty of room in that big house you're bound to buy, right?" "I actually already own a condo, Uncle Robert," I reminded him, in San Francisco. "Oh, but that's just a stepping stone," he laughed. "Single woman like you doesn't need much space. Once you're a big shot executive, you'll upgrade. Family takes care of family after all." As he wandered off in search of the open bar, I overheard my cousins, Brian and Tyler, at the next table. $20 says Olivia brings a cat to the next. Family wedding. Brian snickered. 50 says she doesn't even get invited to the next one, Tyler countered. Did you see that death glare Vanessa gave her? Bet she only invited her because Aunt Lily insisted. My mother, Lily Chen Stevens, chose that moment to appear, accompanied by Walter and another couple I recognized as his business associates. "This is my daughter, Olivia," she introduced with a tight smile. "She works in computers, software, architecture," I corrected automatically. "I'm a director of engineering at Horizon Technologies." "How fascinating," the woman replied with the blank expression people get when they're not listening. "My nephew is studying computer science at Community College. Perhaps you could give him some advice?" "Olivia is very busy with work," my mother interjected before I could respond. "Hardly has time for family, let alone mentoring." Her laugh tinkled like broken glass, but we're so proud of her independence. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional vows and emotional readings I was certain Vanessa had selected for their Instagram potential, rather than personal meaning. Throughout the service, I felt eyes on me, pitying glances from older relatives, smug looks from cousins who had succeeded where I had failed by getting married young. By the time we moved to the reception hall for dinner, I had finished 2 glasses of champagne and was seriously contemplating texting Nathan to cancel. What had I been thinking? Inviting him into this viper pit? These people had made me feel inadequate when I was merely successful. How would they treat him once they discovered his wealth? In the ornate bathroom where I retreated to collect myself, 2 of Vanessa's bridesmaids were touching up their makeup and gossiping freely, unaware of my presence in the stall. "Can you believe Olivia showed up alone again?" the first voice said. "My mom says she's married to her job because no man would put up with her attitude." "It's sad, really?" replied the second. "All that education and she doesn't understand that men don't want to compete with a woman's career. My husband says women like her end up alone with their degrees, keeping them warm at night." I stepped out of the stall, causing both women to freeze mid-conversation. Without saying a word, I washed my hands, reapplied my lipstick, and walked out with my head high, though inside their words had found their target with painful accuracy. Back at table 23, I checked my phone, 7:15 p.m. Nathan would arrive soon, and I was beginning to regret my impulsive invitation. This environment was toxic. Why expose him to it? I was composing a message to warn him when the whispers started. At first, I thought it was another round of gossip about me, but the murmurs were spreading from the entrance throughout the entire ballroom. Heads turned, conversations halted, and even the string quartet seemed to falter for a moment. "Who is that?" someone whispered loudly. "Must be Garrett's mysterious Silicon Valley investor friend," another replied. Across the room, Vanessa was Seacom frowning, clearly annoyed that attention was being diverted from her special day. "And the wedding?" Will we be invited? That depends, I said honestly. On whether you show interest in knowing me, the real me between now and then, not just the version of me that's convenient or advantageous. As she walked away, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. Setting boundaries was painful, but necessary, like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. Across the room, I spotted Vanessa sitting alone at the bridal table, her expression thoughtful as she watched the remaining guests on the dance floor. On impulse, I approached her. Congratulations again, I offered. Despite everything, it was a beautiful ceremony. She looked up, her perfect makeup slightly smudged from what might have been tears. Did you really pay for this venue? She asked directly. I nodded. Nathan made the calls, but yes, it was my idea. Why? After how I've treated you? The things I've said behind your back? She shook her head in confusion. I considered my answer carefully, because I remember when we were kids, before the family politics took over. You talked about your dream wedding at a place like this, with the crystal chandeliers and the grand staircase. When Nathan mentioned he knew the manager here, it seemed like an opportunity to make that happen. Her carefully constructed facade cracked further. I've been horrible to you, she admitted. Jealous of your freedom, your career, everything my mother told me wasn't important while pushing me toward the perfect marriage. We were both playing roles assigned to us, I replied. The good daughter following tradition, the rebellious one rejecting it, neither of us created those categories. For a moment, I glimpsed the cousin I had been close to as a child, before expectations and competition had driven us apart. I'm not saying we'll ever be best friends, I added honestly. Too much has happened, but maybe we can stop being enemies. She nodded slowly. I'd like that. As I moved to leave, she called after me. Olivia, for what it's worth. He seems to really see you. Not many people find that. I smiled, acknowledging the rare, genuine moment between us. I know. The evening continued to unfold with similar conversations, some productive, others less so. Uncle Robert attempted a half-hearted justification of the loan he'd never repaid, claiming he'd always intended to make it right when the time was right. I didn't bother arguing, simply informing him that Nathan's company would be conducting an audit of his investment firm as part of their due diligence process, a standard procedure that suddenly seemed to make him very nervous. Aunt Margaret avoided me entirely, though I caught her instructing her daughters to maintain the relationship with Olivia while shooting calculating glances in Nathan's direction. The most meaningful interaction came last, as Nathan and I were preparing to leave. My father approached, maintaining the respectful distance he'd kept all evening. That took courage, he said simply, nodding toward the reception where the confrontation had occurred. Standing up to the family like that. I had good backup, I replied, glancing at Nathan. Yes, you did. My father extended his hand to Nathan. Thank you for supporting my daughter when I couldn't or didn't. Nathan shook his hand firmly. She doesn't need much support, just someone who recognizes her worth. I've always recognized it, my father said quietly,